politics ever. Number two, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number three, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number four, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck.
Three.
Hello, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. Welcome, one and all. It's good to see all of you here this evening. People, it's been a fun little run here, hasn't it? The tenor of the boat has changed. We've talked about it a lot. And I think if you start to analyze this, you could go back to the very beginning, I suppose, and watch the evolution of the channel. But if you start to analyze just the sort of the paradigm shift that we've had here in the last week, and you were to ask somebody to try to describe what has changed, I think that there are people here that might say, people of, it's becoming more of a group, therapy kind of thing. I think that there's a lot of people who would take that approach. I think the best description for the change that I've seen, at least sitting, where Mark and I sit, is all stems from the word share. Truthfully, what has changed the most in my mind is that people here are sharing in ways that they haven't before. In doing so, it has allowed the host, to interact with the crew in ways that hadn't happened before. And I think that that's probably the biggest shift that I have seen since starting this. It really has become a situation where individuals who are coming here are delving into issues that are far more in depth than, hey, I need to quit. One of the things about the lifeboat is it's pretty obviously a channel about recovery. So the issue that most people think about when you think about recovery is the fact that you need to get off whatever your drug of choice is. But the underlying issues that cause people to try and drug parts of their mind, the underlying issues that makes people run and hide and do so through the use of chemicals really is what needs to be tackled. Because as we've said so many times in the past, someone pulled the Band-Aid off and things got real, says the seventh son. I suppose that might be another way to put it. It is the type of situation where once you start to peel back the onion, once you start to try to figure out exactly what's going on, it's been said so many times here that if you get sober, right, it's really a process of learning to cope with things that come at you in life and do so in a manner that leaves you happy. The other thing is just plain chemical free. If you set down the bottle, or if you put down the pipe or the needle or whatever your previous drug of choice, you see what I did there? Whatever your previous drug of choice was, once that is eliminated out of your life, well, then you're chemical free. But that does not make you, on your way to living your best life. It is quite simply base camp. It is the part of the journey where you can start to take a good hard look at the things that drove you to want to use in the first place. And if you attack those issues, if you start to really work on the things in your life that made you want to drug, then you have your best chance going forward for happiness. If you watched this morning's video, and a handful of you did, we talked about the fact that in the month of December, we will be talking about a series that we're calling "You Are Not Your Brain." This is going to be, I think, this is going to be good stuff for all involved. The study by two PhDs that really started to take a look at the brain found some very unusual things. One of which is they say about 50% of whether or not you will be a happy person is genetics. So if you come from happy stock, if you come from parents who are happy all the time, then you are more likely to be happy. But again, this is 50%. So what that means is that at least 50% of what determines whether or not you're going to be happy is in your lap. More than half of that responsibility falls to each and every one of us individually. So by taking control of your life and evaluating exactly what was going on and what is going on now and what is going to be happening to you in the future and how you choose to deal with that is going to determine whether or not the rest of your time on this planet is spent with a smile on your face, or if the rest of your time on this planet is spent miserable. And we all know those people that aren't happy individuals, and watching them sort of grind through the day to day is a difficult thing to watch. It really is. So that is coming up. I'm looking forward to that. But the key to what has been happening here on the lifeboat is the delving in, the peeling off of the Band-Aid, the peeling back of the onion. But it all starts with the word share. It all starts with people who show up here and are willing to share things that previously were too personal to share with anybody, and definitely too personal to share with people in this kind of a format with what we have here at the lifeboat. But it has been amazing to watch what has happened as people started to share. There was a great post up on the lifeboat Facebook group page today, and it showed a set of keys hanging there as a sort of a rust is on like a jailer's key ring, and it said, "Don't be afraid to share your story. It could be the keys that unlock someone else's prison." I gotta say that again. It said, "Don't be afraid to share your story. It could be the keys that unlocks someone else's prison." I think one of the keys, no pun intended, to what we're doing here is the fact that when someone comes here to work through issues that they have going on in their life, share what is going on in their life, and they share their concerns and their struggles, so oftentimes I get emails shortly after the show from people that talk about just how affected they were. And it isn't the people who are coming here asking. And it's astounding to me as the host of this show, how often someone will come up and say, boy, I was listening and this was the pivotal thing that really made me want to quit, or this was the thing that made me want to take a look at whatever. And what they mention, you go, huh? There are certain things that you think to yourself, this is a good one. Boy, when we share this, when we start talking about this is really going to get people's attention. But so oftentimes it's something that seems, as the host of the show, to be really insignificant, something that doesn't seem to be all that pivotal, that gets somebody to slide from this is where I'm at to this is where I want to be, or this is where I want to be to I am going to do this. I'm drawing a line in the sand. I am going to start to take a look at my life. I'm going to start to do whatever. So we're coming into the holiday season, and we talked about how painful the holidays are for people. Everybody, not just people in recovery, but people all over the world struggle with the holidays. And we've gone over all of these reasons. There's no reason to rehash them. But we all know that as we start getting closer to the holidays, we're all going to be on edge. There's going to be some strain. There's going to be some pressures, and how we deal with those things. This is a great opportunity to discuss the kind of things that happen in a normal person's life, because they are big time exacerbated during the holidays. The small day-to-day stressors that tend to drive a person crazy, things like family, right? Things like crowds, all of the small things that just sort of grind your gears are something that during the holiday season we have to deal with in a much different way, because there's just no getting around it. We just finished the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. 18 people in my home and 3 dogs, and I can't begin to tell you what 3 animals from 3 different families and 15 different people who comprise 4 different families, make up 4 different families, the different amounts of stress that can bring into a situation. And it was a daily struggle for me, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't high. All of the times that I had spent with my loved ones, over the course of the last almost 3 decades, I was drugged. My ability to be kicked back and relaxed was greatly enhanced by my previous drug of choice. And going into this holiday this year without any of that assistance was overwhelming. And all of the things that, for lack of a better word, that I preach here on a day-to-day basis, I had to put into effect. And it's a lot easier to preach them than it is to actually practice them. It was, I did literally the exact same things that I'm telling you about. But I don't want you to think for a second that when I'm up here and talking about how, hey, you know what? It's not the outside events that are, going to dictate your happiness. It's how you react to them. It's your ability to take that and not react to it, with the reactions of your conscious or unconscious mind, but to use your analytical mind and to actually blah, 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 blah. When you actually put that into play, when that's something that you have to then do in order to remain happy, it really becomes a different thing. And I'm acutely aware of that over, because of the last week. So as we start getting into the holidays and we start talking about sharing, the more you share what is going on in your life, the better the holiday season is going to be. And I mean this in a lot of different ways. So if we start breaking down how many different ways you can share, I don't mean get out the checkbook, and I don't mean look at what I bought, because those are sharing. There's no two ways about it. That is the kind of thing that definitely falls under the heading of someone sharing. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things like sharing your life with others. As you get into the holidays and you have people into your home, and you have people that come and spend the holiday season, whether they're vacationing, whether they're stopping by, or whether they're people that you just spend time with during the day, you are sharing your time. You're sharing the most valuable commodity that you have, the one thing that can't be replaced. It can't be bought. It can't be stolen. It can't be whatever. You can't manufacture it. So the sharing of time. The second thing is sharing yourself, right? This is huge, whether or not you really think about it in terms of what it is, but it is huge to share yourself with someone. That's the Band-Aid that Seventh Son was talking about removing, right? And when you start talking about sharing yourself, there's a lot of different aspects to that, right? You can share joy, which is easy. It should be anyway, right? Definitely the easier of the things that you have to share. The tougher of them is to share your pain, to share your struggles, to share the things that are going on in your life that are uncomfortable. So, as the captain of this here vessel, my hat is off to all of the people who are coming here on a nightly basis now and sharing the pain in their lives, sharing things like fear. It's not fun as a human being to say, I'm scared. It's not fun as a human being to say that, the things that are going on in my life are stressing me out. The things that are going on in my life are making me concerned. We all know, I'm not saying anything that all of us didn't share already, but we know what's going on with Miss V. So for her to come here and say, what's happening now, and this jackwagon intending to go to the box is most assuredly stressing her out. But to come here and share it, it has caused a lot of things to happen. If you're over on the Facebook live feed, the live
lifeboat safe harbor that we have assembled over there on Facebook, you will see a lot of support and a lot of people who are talking exactly about what is going on in her life. Truth 760 says, Miss V, anxiety is debilitating. People who have rarely experienced it can't understand it. When you go through it, it's 24/7. It's nightmarish. I hope you can get the relief that I did. The first step to that relief is sharing. Make no mistake. You can argue that. You can come at it from a different angle. But what it really boils down to is if you hold that in, the healing process doesn't start. If you hold that in and you internalize it, regardless of what it is, this just happens to be a beautiful example. But if you share the things that are going on, especially in this kind of an environment where people are showing up for really the goal of helping individuals cope. All of us here have professed the desire to help one another with the things that are going on in their lives, right? Miss V says, if you people only knew, you know what? If we only knew, there was probably going to be a little bit more compassion. There would probably be some other natural emotions. Some of them would be great. Some of them wouldn't. When you share things that are really painful, there's going to be empathy and sympathy. There's also probably going to be a bit of pity. Grant Harper, it is so good to see you. I have been worried about you all day long, Grant. I hope that things worked out with what's going on in your life. If it's something that you choose to share with the group, great. If not, just know you can get a hold of me. I've sent you a couple of emails today, so please do reach out to me. That would be good stuff. Thank you, appreciate that. So yeah, people, the more that you share what's going on in your life, the better off you're going to be. I don't think that that's way too open to debate. It's part of what you do in a group setting. It's the reason that the boat has changed. It's the reason the boat continues to change. The more that people come here and share what is going on in their lives, the more do they help themselves. And in the process, as that quote said, it might just be the keys that releases somebody else from their prison. You never know if the things that you're coping with and going through on a daily basis might not be the exact same thing that someone else is going through at the same time, or it may have nothing to do with what is going on in their life. But just watching people go through this process may be enough to bring relief to people. The more that the group mentality all pulls for the same thing, the closer that people grow with one another, the more healing that takes place. And the more healing that takes place, painfully, obviously, the less likely you are to go and do drugs. Yeah, Grant, hopefully you can do a slow taper, my brother. I would like to believe that Grant has shared with the group before that the substance he's trying to get off are benzodiazepines. We have talked at length in this group before about what it means to get off benzos. It is not something that you can do quickly. It is something that is exactly necessary to taper. It really is. Yeah, and we've talked about this, Grant, and I hope that's what you're doing. Wages weighs in with very, very smart, Grant. We want to make sure, in the perfect case scenario, you do it under the care of a doctor. If that is, not the case, then you really do need to, to make sure that you're at least backing off. I'm sorry, just backing up and checking out what you people have said. That is important to me. Just checking, people. It is kind of essential now that I do a little bit more scrolling because the complexion of the channel has changed. I want to make sure that there isn't too much going on in that comment section that we are all not sharing. As the host of this, seeing what you people share is essential. It also gives me a warm and fuzzy that while I'm doing what I do and while I'm coming up with subjects that in theory are going to make people think and make people start conversations that may lead to people sharing more and more, I want to make sure that the crew is, making everyone feel as if they have their back. And I see that each and every day in the live feeds. But yeah, it's got to make you feel good. Pamela Swan shows 3 squirrels. I'm surprised I didn't get a 4th. People sharing your pain, sharing your hope, sharing your story. These are all key. I think that one of the things that separates Lifeboat Live from other groups on the out in cyberspace and other places that create content is probably sharing love. I think that you're welcome, Grant. I think that sharing the love here is probably what really sets this channel off from everyone else. I'm sure that, as I've said before, if you just arrived here off the street and you popped into a Lifeboat Live, you're either going to be really pleasantly surprised at how much everyone here seems to care for one another, or it's going to scare the heck out of you. Either way, the reason behind that is pretty pure. There are people here who come each and every day just trying to help one another. Neil Parkinson says, Fee, most people who love addicts have to leave them. I believe that is essential. There are people who leave addicts because of their drug addiction. There are people who stick with them till the bitter end and do everything they can to help walk them through the process of trying to get sober. There are also people who, because they can't leave, become so codependent that it rots them from the inside out and does more damage to the people supporting the addict than the drugs are probably doing to the person who is addicted themselves. It is a very, very dangerous thing to love a drug addict, but there are many, many cases where people do stick with their loved ones to the bitter end. We see it all the time on the boat. You hear stories of people that, you may not be the type of support that is necessary if you're going to love an addict is completely different. We've talked about it a lot in here. It's I don't want to call it tough love, because tough love, people, the reason I never use the term tough love, and every once in a while someone will email me and tell me that there's nothing wrong with tough love. The reason I don't use the term tough love is because for a long time, while I was in the life, there was a program called Tough Love. And the tenets of that program were frightening. For instance, let's say that you have parents and there are 2 siblings, a brother and a sister, and the sister is doing drugs. The brother is not. They are going to go out of their way to make sure that they are equally mean, basically, or equally tough to both of them, because they believe in that picking one or the other is going to really damage the child who's not the child who's using. So they will treat the child who's not using the exact same way. They will treat them both as if they're both used. It's just some of the most ridiculous things. And as I read through all of the practices and all of the tenets of this tough love program, I walked away honestly having to go and rinse my mouth out because of the taste of vomit that kept coming to the back of my throat when I read what these jackwagons had come up with as concepts. One of the other things that they were very, very fond of was bouncing people out on the street. And I'm talking about kids 15 and 16 years old, where parents would just say, well, you're doing drugs, you're not doing them under my roof, and throwing minors out into the street. So I tend to really hate the term tough love, but you understand what it means to normal folks in the world. And that tough love is just, you can love somebody and still say, I am not going to enable you in any way. There are people for whom tough love means that, they're going to stick by that person's side, but they're not going to write them a blank check, or they're also not going to believe each and everything that they say is, as if it's gospel. One symptom of addiction is emotional coldness. Your feelings are numb. We are speaking truth. A non-addict cannot deal with this. Something? There is really something to be said for for the type of communication that Niall's talking about. Addicts very oftentimes, not all the time, because there's really there's nothing that you can say all the time with addicts, because there are just so many different brands of addiction and how people, there's as many, but yeah, across the board, I think it's a pretty safe thing to say that that addicts, when being honest, can be brutally honest, and they tend to. It's difficult for people who are not using to try to understand them, but oftentimes the addict doesn't show that. Oftentimes, and I think Niall actually sent me a text about this once, or a direct message about this once. But so oftentimes the addict creates a persona. The addict creates a shell around them of what they want the world to see. And that shell, more often than not, while complete and utter BS, shows a much more caring, individual than the addict probably really is. Because if as a drug addict you are completely honest, you're going to run off all of the people in your life who care about you, and very oftentimes addicts want to be able to use those people for their needs. I mean, that's one of the defining characteristics of people in life, especially. I mean, it's not nearly as glaring with alcohol and things like that, but if you've got someone who needs to come up with $300 to $500 a day in order to feed their habit, very oftentimes they cultivate relationships with people based on the desire to get cash, to get support, to get anything else that they can get from those people. Oculi Mortis is back. Sorry, I was getting butter on my screen. I had to finish it in a safe place. Well played, Oculi. Glad to have you back. That tough love you just described defined my relationship with my mother for more than 2 decades. That philosophy is sociopathic. Thank you, Jacob. I agree with you 100%. It's just ridiculous. And some people actually took the time to write this down. If somebody was just treating people like that within their sphere of influence, if they were just doing that to their children or something else, you could be disgusted by it. But to take the time to write this down as if it's a good thing, to write down that whole tough love philosophy as if it's something that makes sense and something that is going to help raise kids that are going to be normal. Honestly, I think it should be, it's worthy of prosecution. Obviously, that's maybe a bit of hyperbole, but not much. It really is one of those things that got taught, and it unfortunately destroyed the term tough love will never really mean the same. Addicts will use the people they love over and over. It's important to understand that the road to recovery is knowing that. Addicts will absolutely use loved ones over and over and over again until they don't. And that's what makes it so difficult, is that, and this, we did a video on this, on why it is so difficult for the general public to not cast aspersions on people who are trying to get sober, and why we sort of all get thrown into one box. Do you remember that video that I did on what it meant to be thrown into boxes? Like categorically, it comes from something called Johari's box. This guy that came up with the different theory that everybody fits into a box of certain kinds. Well, the box that addicts get put into very oftentimes are because of just that, Niall, is that so oftentimes society has watched people who, in some cases, they will continue to use their loved one for years or decades or half a century, and then one day they actually get sober. And the sad thing is that during the time that they were using their loved ones, they said, "This is it. This is the time. You know what I mean? This time I'm good." They have to continue to say that if they're going to continue to sponge off them, if they're going to continue to steal from them, or do whatever it is that they're getting from the loved ones to help keep that habit, afloat. So it's difficult for those people. It's the ultimate cry wolf scenario. I mean, for everyone who's trying to get sober, we have to deal with not just the fact that we did this to our loved ones X number of times before the sobriety actually took, but every addict has done it, right? Everyone has a story of the addict that, stole mom's jewelry and pawned it, or, stole wallets from their grandmother, or whatever the case is. It's rampant, and those aren't stories that go away. They leave lasting scars, and they get told over and over again. And you're right, they will continue to steal and be dishonest, and until it stops. And that's the hardest thing is, you can be sober for 6 years or whatever. I've said this many times before. If $20 ends up missing somewhere and I'm in the room, I'm going to be the suspect. That's a reality of that box theory is a fancy way of saying stereotype. Here's why Yohari didn't mean that CT555, because yeah, there's something to that. But what Yohari was talking about wasn't just stereotypes, because he was talking about, yes, the what goes into the box is stereotypical, but there are parts of that that most assuredly aren't. The Yohari's box talks about there's different aspects to that box, and what you just described perfectly is how society views. So how society views a boy is that he's tough, he doesn't cry, he doesn't do all those things. Most assuredly, those are all stereotypes. But there is also the legitimate box. What does make him different without the stereotype? There are certain characteristics that for stereotype just by birth are going to be a little bit different. But yeah, I think you could probably interchange the word. So guilt and remorse is where we end up. Not our fault. We were never taught how to love. But it's essential to know that guilt and remorse means you love your parents, partners, siblings, etc. Yeah. I think the problem with a lot of addicts, it just depends on when you become addicted and how you become addicted. Don't you think, Niall? I mean, there are people who, I've seen situations where somebody, broke bad at 26 and had very healthy relationships and things were good. And then, through, one thing or another, they end up, off the deep end at a late age. And, they probably had a handle at love and things. But yeah, you're right. Remorse definitely, all of that proves, although we may be defective, we certainly feel all of those emotions and as much as anyone else. Wow, you said a 20. I stole 20 from one of my best friends because it was just out in the open. Used it for my addiction. It haunts me. Truth. It says a lot about who you are that still haunts you. I would be really, really embarrassed to sit here and talk about all of the people that I stole from, and we wouldn't have enough time. We like keeping these live feeds to an hour. I was a horrendously dishonest person, and I've said this before on the program. If I was in your house and I was looking at something, there was a value to it. You know what I mean? Like if I looked at something in the house, I thought to myself, who would buy this and how much dope could I get for it? And I don't mean, from the word go, but toward the end of my addiction, there was nothing on this planet that didn't have a drug value attached to it. It was how I viewed everything. It was how I viewed, and if somebody said, hey, you want to do this, this, and this, or you invite you to go do something, I was so deep into the addiction that my first thought was, how is going and doing this going to get me dope? How is going to do this going to get me money that I can use to get dope? Everything at that stage really came down to that and nothing else. Full of Hope says, love to you all. Thank you, Lifeboat. I had no one else to tell. I feel so blessed. How cool is that? That really is just cool. I'm sorry. Fiona Crispin says, Leisure Beast, I never, ever said anything to anyone, but over the years, I've gotten worse. Sometimes these days, I want to explode. It's bad. People, it really says a lot. When you hear people say things like what Fiona just said, this is sharing. This is people who are opening up and talking about things. If you say that, you're dealing with pain from your first marriage, and you're just now feeling like this is a place that you can share it, that is awesome. Niall says, maybe I should rephrase that. All addicts are loving people. There is a reason why, when, and how, sure, but we all do know how to love or live. You know something, Niall? I have always been of the belief that because of what addiction does in the mind, that when you when you remove the chemical, a lot of times you find people when you remove that, I think that the love emotion is almost hyperactive. You find some of the most loving people in the world are recovering addicts. I do think that there is a certain aspect to addiction that causes people to feel emotions deeper once they get off the dope, and you find some very, very caring people from that community. Think you never stole from your job. If you went to work high, you stole their confidence. CT555, that is an awesome, awesome comment. Did everybody hear that? He said, you think you never stole from your job? If you went to work high, you stole their confidence. And you know what? You stole more than that. You stole, they were paying you to do something that chances are you weren't doing the way you were supposed to. You know, they were paying you for an hourly wage and they sure as hell weren't paying you to be there high. But that's an astute thing to say, right? You're ripping, if you're going to work high, you're ripping off your boss in so many different ways. You're absolutely stealing from your employer. CT555, I love that, man. That is a really intelligent thing to say. I've never heard it put that way either. That's awesome. Hope everybody caught that. That is really, really good stuff. Flamin' Jackson says, we're here for you, Lady Fiona. And Fiona, I hope you know that everyone here is. There's a lot of people here that care. This is this people is a shining example of exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about coming here and sharing yourself, coming here and sharing your joys, your sorrows, and insights. You know, like what CT555 just said. I think very oftentimes there are people who justify things by saying, "Well, I never stole from my employer," or you know, "I never did this and I never did that," and it really becomes easy to lie to yourself, to cloud yourself. It's awesome when there's someone here from a different perspective who can say something like that, because really that was it really was a great way, you know, to look at that. Yeah, it's it's a beautiful thing. One thing we have not touched on: addicts and non-addicts with the same void in their lives are like moths to a flame. Um, if when you say addicts and non-addicts, well, there are people for whom you know you see individuals who fall in love with addicts, and if that's what you were talking about earlier on in the program, there are people who only pick addicts for whatever reason, and it's that codependence that you hear people talk about. And I do believe that very oftentimes, in so many ways, they're just like the addict minus the chemical. Yep, that's good stuff. Jacob Forrester, some wisdom. He says, in the restaurant business, it's every other person that's zipped out of their skull. The others are big believers in booze and copious amounts of cannabis. Uh, I have I have had limited experience in the restaurant industry. However, I had a brother-in-law who was a chef, and I remember just, and you know, my brother also had worked at a restaurant back in the '80s as well, and my memory of restaurants seemed to be that there was an awful lot of drugs being done, a lot of cocaine, a lot of people who just drank all day long. It definitely is one of those businesses, I think. Yeah, Niall says yes. I mean codependence. Yeah, I think you're right, Niall. I really I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Service industry night, SIN, but a funny acronym, huh? That probably makes a perfect amount of sense there. To to each and every person here who is coming here this evening and opening up in the comment section, thank you. It's amazing to sit in this chair and watch the number of different people who are sharing different things at different times, the different conversations that are going on. It's people, when I said that this boat will never be the same. Fiona says, I've worked in the food industry. That is so incredibly true. My boss would show up completely off her face most days, and I'd have to take over. Pamela Swan says, I worked in restaurants and served beverages in casinos and barland and then bartended for 20 years. I think it is I don't think that there's anyone now who is debating the fact that that's a tough industry when it comes to drugs and alcohol. It really is Charlie Mullins, thank you. Charlie Mullins says, this boat is a great place to be. I would like to, before we get to that end of the, Joanna W says, it is, Tommy. My son is a chef, not so much in higher end restaurants, but he started in the usual chain restaurants. So his experience is, there's a lot of users in that industry. You know what, people, I think oftentimes because of the, especially in, in bar restaurants, settings, it's, and I know I'll catch flack for this, but they kind of deal in that. You know what I mean? I mean, think about what a bar is. They're selling a buzz, right? Even if there's a restaurant attached and they're making food or whatever, they're selling, a drug over the counter. And it's, I think that is just kind of conducive to that kind of lifestyle. Then throw in the fact that the term I remember them using was, that you were in the weeds. So oftentimes everything is so fast paced and there's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety that, that attaches itself to that kind of work. You've got waiters and waitresses that are going and taking orders for 6 and 7 people and trying to put all of this, all of these different things just sort of kind of lends itself to that. Niall, I love this. So putting down the drug or the booze or the pills is useless without knowing why we started. One thing that addiction gives us, free of charge, is a block of emotion. You're absolutely right. However, only, and I might be splitting hairs on this, Niall, but the one thing that I would say is so oftentimes, 100 out of 100 times, no one is going to figure out exactly what that problem is while they're still under the influence. You're right. Quitting the substance is just the starting line. It is just the base camp, and it isn't going to get a whole lot done. It's the term that we like to use when we say dry drunk. I know people who have managed to stay sober for long periods of time. We call it white knuckle sobriety. They're miserable. They're the exact same person that they were when they were using. The only difference is that they're not high. They're still the same self-centered, greedy, miserable, deceptive, just nasty people. The one thing is that they're no longer under the influence. But when I talk about sobriety, and I've said this many times here, when I'm talking about sobriety, it was, it's more of a situation where you're working a program. You're working on what your issues are. The drugs and the alcohol, whatever your previous drug of choice is out of your system, it's out of your life. And now you're working on a daily basis to try to be a better human being. You're trying to become that new creation and trying to figure out exactly what was the problems that led you to doing what you're doing or what you were doing. And that's where the group, therapy thing really comes in. Oh, I know why I started. That's going to be put in my letter. I just don't know whether to send it to Tommy or to FB. I assume FB is Facebook. Miss V, tell you what, reach out to me, send that letter, and we'll talk about it together. If it's something that you want to have on the air, great. If it's not, that's fine too. But please don't hesitate. This may come as a shock to you, but my email is captaintommyscoville@gmail.com. That is captaintommyscoville@gmail.com. So please do that. Funny enough, the worst place I've ever worked in when it comes to people using was financial consultants. I did, I spent a lot of time, Fiona, working on a telephone, and working, in rooms that sold things, anything from stock to whatever, and there was a tremendous amount of drugs being done there. It's just differently with how they do it. They're sneakier, but everybody's still doing it. It isn't just the service industry, says Truth 760. I worked in tech support on the night shift. When you get off at 11 p.m. or later, the only thing to do after work is go to a bar. Becomes a family of sorts. Absolutely, Truth. And you see that in a lot of different industries. Been there, done that. Fee. Corporate jobs in accounting had planned to retire from there until my back ended my career. That was Joanna W. People, is it safe to say that there are very few occupations out there anymore that people aren't getting high at? Because that's kind of what it sounds like. This is Niall. This is a good one. A codependent spouse will often suggest an addict to use again or drink again because the dry drunk is worse. This is so complex. People, I hope you heard that, because he's not wrong. You hear this all the time, where a codependent person will honestly try to talk somebody into using again, because the dry drunk, the person that doesn't work on their issues, at least when they were under the influence, there was a block of time each day that they were happy. When you remove that, but you don't fix the problems, it's just people that are angry all the time and gritting their teeth and being unhappy. And you do hear stories all the time about people whose significant others or girlfriends or boyfriends or whatever the case may be says, "Man, I liked you better when you were just getting high." And it's understandable if you think about it. Harper's mama, good to see you again. Yeah, and I just saw an email that said you should reach out to me. Please do, Harper's mama. I am Captain Tommy Scoville at gmail.com. Captain Tommy Scoville at gmail.com. Please reach out to me. Say hello. No getting high in the corporate setting I was in. I'm sure upper management in those settings may. Like I said, Joanna, I think there's a lot of it that goes on, but it's really sneaky. Like I knew behind every office door somebody was doing something. They were eating pills, they were snorting coke or whatever. It just wasn't like out in the open, sort of a party kind of a thing. It was people just doing their little sneaky thing. And I worked in marketing for a long time, and it was, yeah. Honestly though, people, I was probably the problem everywhere I went. You know what I mean? Because I can't think of an occupation where there wasn't a lot of drug use going on, but that just might be me. It might have been me that was the problem. Lady Fiona Crispin says, that was me, Joanna W. I was the worst at sales. I could not sell anything. I believe that, Lady Fiona. Can you people not see Fiona trying to sell? When the person says, "No, I don't think I want that." Okay, lovely. Have a nice day. Just been nice talking to you. Yeah, Fiona, I don't see you in that line of work. Maybe I'm wrong. It's hard when people that liked you when you were using no longer like you when you are getting sober. I lost everybody, Truth. The ones that are still alive definitely do not want anything to do with me. Jacob Forrester says, dry drunks are pretty pissy. I was that way for the first year or two after I quit. It was all stubbornness in the early days. Obviously, Jacob, you worked through it because you're a very, very philosophical and open guy. So you're definitely not the dry drunk these days. Miss V, like that joke I made at Lady Fiona's expense, which is good. I think everybody can appreciate that. Well, people, I do want to do a shout out to all of the people. I hope I've not offended anyone. I love this group and its transition, as the captain alluded to. Niall, I don't believe that you've offended anyone here this evening. I speak on just for myself, but you certainly didn't offend me. I do like Tommy. Okay, have a nice day. Very good. Good talking to you. So I do want to say thank you to the Blue Wrenchers, all of the people that come here and do what they do. It's a thankless job, but we got the best in the business. There is nobody in anywhere on YouTube that works harder than the crew that we've got here. Great people, and they come here and they do it just because they care about the boat, and that's pretty good stuff. It really is, and they do it so well that the day is coming where I can probably just go like this, and no one will even notice. I'm just gonna slide right out of here. But there is a few minutes left, and I see no reason why my bobble-headed partner should not have to weigh in here. It's not that I haven't been squirreling the entire time, but it is always nice to hear from Mark, see what he has to say. But of course, Mark has also kind of been going through it, so he may not be on the other side of the glass, people. He is having some health issues, as we know.
I'm here, man.
Oh, sorry, couldn't see you.
Oh, yeah. I shut my video off because I was dropping a lot of frames. So when I shut it off in Zoom, it lets the feed go better. I don't normally have to do that. Tonight was exceptionally bad, so just trying to keep the.
Well, I appreciate you being on the ball. How are you, my brother?
I'm living, guys, living. I mean, obviously, yeah, there's a lot of good conversation in there. You know, there's some stuff in there that, and most of the stuff there, I think all of us can agree to. Most of us, anyway. One thing I would push back against a little bit is that, I think everybody's recovery is different. Number one, everybody chooses their own. They have to go down their own road. So to make a blanket assumption that you have to leave a drug addict is probably not correct. I've been with my wife for 28 years, and she's stuck right with me. And on the other side of it, guess what? We're way stronger for it. And so that's what I would say to that. But I do think it is individual. Now, I would also agree to the fact that the majority of that is not the case. I get it.
Yeah.
But I would caution against us making a blanket statement against any group at all, period.
About anything.
Yeah. And that's
about anything. Drug addicts are definitely as individual as everyone else. You know what I mean? There are characteristics that are kind of across the board, but every single story is different.
Yeah,
I believe
we fight stigma anyway, and I just like I said, and there's nothing wrong with having holding to that belief. I mean, I get it, I really do. It's just for me and my position and what I went through, it was different. Of course, my whole addiction, although I can relate and although I can sympathize with a lot of stuff that people go on, my road to addiction was different than most, which is why probably my situation is a little bit different. I do have a unique perspective on, how I got there, and if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't be sitting right here. I would literally be like a red hot chili pepper underneath the bridge, because that's probably where I would be. I didn't have no other reason. She gave me that reason, and here are my kids. So that's for me. And I would assume that there's other people out there that experience the same kind of thing. But if we're talking statistics, of course there's going to be more people that have to walk away because they simply can't go back to that same situation. Especially when you're talking about codependency. Codependency cannot happen. That will not work. I've seen it even with nicotine destroy marriages. So it's a hard thing to wrap your brain around, But that's pretty much all I was wanted to say. And thanks everybody. I know you guys have been praying for me and sending me good thoughts and stuff. It does most definitely. Yeah. No, and you didn't offend me either, man, and not at all. And I don't get offended, guys. I just like I said, I want to provide that my perspective sometimes, and maybe somebody out there is experiencing the way I'm going through things, and I might be able to, shed some light and maybe give some advice on that end. But to what Niall said there, I do wholeheartedly agree that for the most part, you can't be around that situation. It's the same thing we talk about with, taking the same road home. Sometimes you got to go out of your way 3 miles just so you ain't got to look at the same scenery because it's a trigger.
Yeah.
who wants to live with a constant trigger? You know what I mean? And that's kind of what that would be with codependency. It would just be very, very hard. And I know, take it to Hollywood, most of us do anyway, because movies affect us in certain ways. Sometimes we don't even realize it, but it's much like that, the show Breaking Bad. And I know even saying that word might trigger some people. I can't watch that show myself. I did watch like the first couple seasons before I got help, right? And I seen a codependency situation on that show, and it ended up with the wife actually dumping an ATM machine on the husband's head. So that's the kind of, and she went straight back to the couch and banged right there, and and there was a kid in the room. So what I'm saying is, although that sounds crazy, and it was Hollywood, I guarantee you similar stuff is happening on the daily, and that's a shame. And that's where the codependency thing has to come into play. And there's a whole lot of other things there too. I know it's an extreme example there, but it most definitely does apply to the codependency thing. And yeah, I'm just thankful I didn't have to. And that's, not a whole lot of people can say that. And I've said it since the beginning. I got the biggest support system and the best that you could possibly think of. So anyway.
Yep. You are blessed. I don't think there's any doubt. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
People, we are at the witching hour. I want to thank everybody that shares, that comes here and shares themselves, that shares their victories and their triumphs, and they're also shared with us their past and their struggles and their defeats, because truthfully, you never know when that is going to be the keys to somebody else's prison. I also want to thank again, and I will continue to do it every time I can think of it. I want to thank all of our Blue Ranchers, because they are the top of the food chain, really doing beautiful work for us all the time, and it means the world to us. So thank you to one and all. Between tonight and tomorrow morning at about 8:00, when there's a really good chance we'll be putting up a video. The assignment, people.
Hey,
Reach out and try
Tommy,
to save somebody.
Before you go into that real quick, I just want just real quick. Moderators, everybody that emailed me, I am going to set up that group tonight. So hopefully I'll be sending you some notifications in the next day or so. You guys know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. So reach out there and try to save somebody, people. And it's a matter of life and death. And I love the fact that we're not always going to agree, but we can always get along. I am Captain Tommy Scoville, on the other side of the glass.
Mark Wages.
That would be Mark Wages. All right. We will see you, people. Have a great night.